Thanks for joining us. We are going to do a dissection in today's session of our video series of laboratory safety. Well, not exactly, but we are going to look closely at the purpose, parts, and correct use of fume hoods as we review fume hood basics. We use fume hoods in the lab to limit exposure to hazardous fumes, vapors, and dusts. In addition, they are designed to mitigate incidents by controlling spills and protecting against explosions. Fume hoods feature 5 enclosed sides with a sliding sash to capture, contain, and exhaust contaminants. Let's take a closer look at the 4 main parts of a fume hood. They are the sash, baffles, airfoils, and performance indicators.
Let's look at each part individually with Heather. The sash is actually a sliding door. It can move both vertically and horizontally. Next are the baffles. They are installed at the back of a fume hood. To keep the air flowing properly, be sure that large equipment or chemical bottles don't block the baffles. This can create dead airspace, and that's not good for you or your coworkers. Here Heather shows us the airfoils at the bottom and sides of the sash opening. They significantly reduce boundary turbulence and improve capture performance for the fume hood. This helps make sure air flows into the hood in a smooth manner to pull contaminants into the hood and away from the user. As you might guess, the performance indicator is a device that shows that the fume hood is working properly. It displays static pressure or airflow. Your lab leader can explain what values you should watch for. A variety of performance indicators are used on fume hoods. Some examples include manometers, magnehelic gauges, and electronic displays. Now that you know the parts of a fume hood, Heather will show you some steps to use it properly. First, Heather checks the performance indicator before she uses the fume hood. Every time. It's a habit for her now. If the fume hood shows a value that doesn't meet the criteria, she won't use it. And by the way, never use things like tinsel, paper towels, or tape as an improvised performance indicator. That's a good way to ensure performance failure and risk to your safety. Notice how Heather maintains a little distance as she works. Be sure to keep your work at least 6 inches inside from the sash. Working too close to the face of the hood can cause contaminants to be released. As noted earlier, it's important that the fume hood is not blocked. Heather makes sure there's nothing crowding or blocking the baffles. She moves larger equipment to a stand or blocks. This allows air to move freely around and under the equipment. Otherwise, fume hood performance would be affected. Heather never forgets this next step. To avoid exposure, she doesn't put her head inside the fume hood. You should be sure to keep all body parts, other than hands and arms, out of the fume hood during hazardous operations. Here you can see how Heather properly positions the sash for optimum safety. She uses the sash as a barrier. Keep the sash as low as reasonably possible in front of you when using the fume hood. That way, if a splash occurs, the sash will offer protection. This next step may not seem like a big deal, but it is. When the fume hood is not in use, Heather keeps the sash closed. Just walking past an open fume hood can create enough turbulence to draw contaminants out of the hood. Keeping sashes closed helps protect workers. Heather, stop! She was just about to turn the fume hood off. Never turn fume hoods off, even when not in use. This can impact the air balance in the lab. Labs are kept under negative pressure to ensure contaminated air doesn't flow out of the lab into other areas. And finally, Heather is planning to get the fume hood re-inspected and recalibrated. That's because she's going to use the fume hood in a different way. And any change in use, including adding new equipment or apparatus, could impact airflow. Heather has showed us how to use fume hoods properly. But what happens if it malfunctions? If that happens, do what Heather is doing. See how she closed the sash? She notifies her supervisor and informs others in the lab. And if appropriate, she helps evacuate the work area.
An important last step Heather takes is to tag or label the fume hood clearly. This helps ensure that no one else will use it. Using a fume hood properly will protect you from hazards like inhalation exposure, unexpected reactions, and chemical spills. And now that you know the ins and outs and ups and downs of how to use fume hoods, you can ensure your lab projects are contained to success.